Welcome back. NASA has released a new report on unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAPs, which is really the new term for UFOs.
Yeah, this report created by an independent study team ranging from professors to science journalists to astronauts, compiling recommendations on what NASA's role should be in investigating UAPs. Joining us now to dig into this report, space historian and professor of science communication at the University of Chicago, Jordan Bimm. Jordan, thanks for being with us.
So before we get into this, sorry, I just totally cut you off. Jordan, good morning.
Morning.
Morning. Great to be with you both.
Great to be with you. So before we really get into the details of the report, the term UAP has been around for a few years, but it's, I feel like, just now becoming more recognized as, you know, the term UFO is maybe making its way out of the common lexicon. But is this a way to separate fact from science fiction?
It is. It's also a way to cast a wider net. So some of the things that are being seen that can't be explained are not flying and they're not objects for certain. So UAP casts a bit of a wider net, but you're right. It's also trying to reboot the field and reboot the conversation around science rather than sensationalism. So think about this. Think about who in your mind is the world's leading expert in UAPs. Your mind probably goes not to a scientist, but to an entertainer, maybe the host of Ancient Aliens. And this is what NASA is trying to combat with this new independent study group. They're trying to reclaim this area of expertise for science. And we had an amazing contrast in this last week. Last week, we had a self-proclaimed ufologist and journalist present to the Congress of Mexico what he claimed were corpses of extraterrestrial beings, a claim that was debunked very quickly based on his spotty track record. And then just a few days later, we had this presentation at NASA headquarters by a team of scientists and science journalists and experts. So this is what NASA is trying to do, is move away from the pseudoscientific entertainment towards science and verifiable knowledge in the study of these unidentified sightings.
And this report is not NASA coming out and saying, okay, we have aliens or we do not have aliens, they exist or they don't exist, but instead it's really talking about we don't have all the answers yet. And here's a recommended roadmap to maybe finding them out. You talked about that good old scientific method. Can you tell us a little bit more about what they're really going to do here with this?
Sure. In the press conference, both NASA Administrator Bill Nelson and the chair of the independent study committee, David Spergel, both said that there is no evidence that the cause or origin of UAPs is extraterrestrial. It just means that some of the things that can't be identified, we don't have enough data to pin down a specific origin or cause upon them. So think of UAP not as aliens, as we do in sort of pop culture. Think of UAP as a category of mystery. Once we know what something is, it's no longer a UAP. Things stay in the UAP category because there's a lack of data to actually say, okay, that was a drone, or that was some atmospheric phenomenon, or that was a military aircraft. So it's about getting better and more calibrated data on the phenomenon, which is what NASA is setting out to do. And this report is the first step in that process.
It's really helpful.
It is.
Yeah.
So speaking of that data, one of the recommendations that stood out to us, I think, was using artificial intelligence and machine learning. However, they say whatever technology is being used, it's more about the quality of the sightings themselves, basically what you were just saying. As technology advances, will it be easier to identify these things, or is there so much more than that to the investigations?
Well, one of the missions of the independent study team was to look around NASA's existing tool set and say, what does NASA already have that will be helpful going forward in the scientific study of these unexplained sightings? And one of the things that they put their finger on is machine learning and artificial intelligence. So NASA has those competencies, and NASA also has a vast archive of atmospheric data and sensor data. And we know that artificial intelligence and machine learning is very good at looking through massive amounts of data for patterns and anomalies. So what the independent study group recommended was putting those tools NASA already has to work looking at some of these pre-existing data sets or real-time data as it comes in from NASA's sensor network to look and see if some of these can be identified and if we can learn anything new about our atmosphere through these tools.
Well, speaking of like putting things to work or people to work, in this 36-page study, this report mentions the public 25 times, saying that engaging the public in its work is really going to be critical in understanding UAPs. They talked about maybe crowdsourcing techniques, maybe uploading a photo from a smartphone onto an app. I mean, what do you think about this part of the study and what they're hoping from this?
This is the part that I really like. So everybody either knows someone or maybe themselves have had an experience where they have seen something in the sky that they can't explain. What NASA wants to do now is turn you and your phone into a sensor as part of their network. So what they hope is that after you have a sighting or someone you know has a sighting, that they will generate a record in a centralized, standardized database. And maybe you attach a photograph that can be used to have location data. And it can be cross-referenced with maybe other people who saw the same thing at the same time, maybe got a clearer photo of it or something like that. And then this can be identified as maybe a drone or a weather balloon or something like that. And we can actually take what today would be something that's unidentified and makes people think of the cultural idea of the space exploring alien for lack of any other explanation, and actually pin a very mundane and very terrestrial origin on that sighting.
I love it. All right. Well, the report did definitely lay out a solid framework of recommendations for NASA. So what is next for NASA? I know they also named a director of UAP research last week, right?
Exactly. So moving forward, they're going to enter this space and try and reclaim it from the pseudoscientific entertainers that you see on TV shows like Ancient Aliens and The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch and shows like that, and really try and move the conversation towards science and not entertainment. So I think what we hope to see is, NASA developing these self-reporting tools. So hopefully they'll release an app or expand an existing reporting app that people can use to identify or to submit data. And also, NASA is going to continue to search for life in the universe using the James Webb Space Telescope, using the rovers on Mars, using robotic spacecraft they're going to launch towards the icy ocean world moons of Jupiter and Saturn, like Europa. If you ask me where we will first encounter extraterrestrial life, I don't think it's going to be in our own atmosphere. I don't believe aliens are visiting us, but I do believe life exists, and we will detect it either in a distant exoplanet or maybe the icy ocean world moons of Jupiter and Saturn.
We might have to save that last bite of yours, Jordan, for posterity to see if that is where they end up finding new life, other life. Jordan Bimm, thank you so much for joining us, space historian, professor of science communication at the University of Chicago. Thank you.
Adrena, Jackie, it's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure to have you. Thanks for your time. We appreciate it.